We are 24 hours away from the start of college football on a big old Saturday. We'll preview all those great matchups as well as some late breaking news concerning LSU football and Saints adding a former LSU Tiger to their roster. We got all that and so much more coming up on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Welcome, everyone, to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Clint Domingue hanging out with you on a fantastic Friday. And we're getting that much closer to week one of college football. After a lengthy weather delay, actually kind of crazy with week one action already underway. And both of those games got a little bit of a delay in the action on Thursday night. We start off with UL Monroe. They shut out the St. Francis Red Flash 29-0. It was a very impressive performance, mainly by Braylon McReynolds. The man had 113 yards, also got a touchdown receiving wise, where he had 2 catches for 20 yards. Definitely was the highlight of the ball game. He also got some love from Hunter Herring, got it run in for a touchdown, as well as the starting quarterback, Aiden Armenta, and then Landon Graves kind of finished out the day. Not a whole lot in terms of great performance through the air. 12 of 23 for Armenta, 95 yards, touchdown, and an interception. Landon Graves looked a little bit better, but it's a very small sample size, 2 of 3 for 28 yards. This UL Monroe team came to play to start out the season. Defense looked good. One of the highlights has to be Darko Perkins McAllister, 8 tackles, 5 solos, 2 of those for a sack. That is nothing short of impressive from this team. Hopefully they can kind of keep the momentum rolling as the season progresses. Next week will be a lot tougher of a challenge, though, as they will be taking on the Alabama Crimson Tide. I said it last episode, but I don't think there's going to be a good old 2007 replay going on with this one. It's not going to happen. I think ULM loses that ball game. But again, you start off 1-0. That is always a step in the right direction. You can say the same for Northwestern State. Those Demons in Natchitoches got it done and forked Alcorn State. And it was a pretty good performance defensively. You had quite a few turnovers in favor of the Demons. You had 2 interceptions in the first half. One of them, Caden Mackey, right before half. It was pretty good. It was a really nice interception in the end zone. He got up there to get a hold of that. We also had a couple fumble recoveries. So it's overall a really nice day for the defense. Made life a lot easier for this offense to get things done. Wasn't necessarily a clean game in any sense of the word, but you wound up getting some really nice performances from key guys. Abram Johnson, 9 of 18 for 85 yards, a touchdown, and a pick. But then you also had Ryan Tyler. He only had 1 carry, but that's all he needed, with a nice little 1-yard scamper into the end zone. But again, I think the defense was the biggest takeaway for this team after a season opening performance. Again, you have the turnovers you had. It's impressive to see what this team can do in 2025. Hopefully they can kind of continue to move forward in the right direction. And next week, they're going to be taking on the Minnesota Golden Gophers at Minnesota. And that's going to be an 11 a.m. ball game, definitely giving that Jefferson Pilot vibe. So if you're up early on a college football Saturday, as you should, I think that's one game you need to keep an eye on. Now let's kind of flip the script over from games that happen to games that are going to happen, and one of the biggest headlines in the state of Louisiana right now. And it's some big news concerning LSU football. AJ Haulcy, one of the big players on the secondary, he got pulled out of the first half of the season opener. And this is probably one of the wildest stories coming out of Baton Rouge, is the announcement. AJ Haulcy not playing in the first half of this Saturday's game. This is due to him getting ejected last year in the regular season finale against BYU while he was with the University of Houston for fighting. This is unsportsmanlike conduct. It's not a targeting penalty, but it is the right call to make. It's just really wild to see this news drop on a Thursday afternoon. Brian Kelly, about an hour before the proverbial hammer dropped, he more or less said, we're just waiting to see how this plays out. He's still practicing with us. Now, mind you, he's not suspended for the whole game. He's just suspended for the first half. It's treated a lot like a targeting penalty but it's just wild. The fact that that is actually a thing that Clemson kind of inquired about. Maybe wanting to get a little bit of a competitive edge against LSU heading into this massive ball game that is going to be your Saturday night main event of the evening. You don't believe me? Everybody's been talking about that over the last few months as being one of the biggest games of that weekend. I'd say outside of the Texas-Ohio State ball game. And other news for LSU baseball landed a 2026 commit from the state of California. Pitcher Logan Schmidt committed to the Tigers, and by many, he's considered to be one of the best arms out of the Golden State with a fastball touching 97. And that's great. You know, it's another great move for head coach Jay Johnson, who's been working the recruiting trail and been getting a lot of great stuff done with this program. Again, 2 national championships in 4 years is nothing to sneeze at. And hopefully he can kind of keep this ball rolling. But I'm wondering if he even stays committed, because we've seen it a lot in the past. And I know NIL has changed the game when it comes to some of these pitchers and some of these big name players. But if he's drafted high enough in 2026, if he lives up to that expectation of a fastball touching 97, a really good curve, I don't necessarily see him making the roster. Again, it's great to see this kind of stuff at the end of the day, but you got to kind of question whether or not he's going to be on the roster long term. Now, when it comes down to it, I think we also got to talk about one of the other commitment news concerning LSU is, without a doubt, 5-star wide receiver Tristan Keys flipping over to the University of Tennessee. This coming from Hayes Fawcett. This is the highest ranked wide receiver commit in program history for the Vols. The number 1 wide receiver in the 2026 class had committed to LSU previously, and then he decided to flip it. Now, mind you, again, a lot of things can change between now and then, but that's a big blow for Brian Kelly's 2026 recruiting class that already had some really good wide receivers in Jabari Mack and Kenny Darby, but it's still going to be a massive blow for that program. And hopefully they can kind of get things together and maybe try and make one more pass at him, because you got a lot of time between now and the early signing period and the good old NSD. And we're talking about National Signing Day. We'll keep you abreast on all these situations concerning some of the commits, because again, this is like peak recruiting season. Like we see in the summer, obviously, a lot of players commit, but this is the time when things get flipped. The apple cart is upset. So it'll be intriguing to see what's going to happen there. One more bit of news before we get into, I think, what you're all looking forward to, and that is the weekend slate predictions, with the Saints adding Louisiana native, former Tampa Bay Buccaneer Trey Palmer. Welcome home, my man. The Kentwood native found his way back home after spending time with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. He had a really good a fairly decent rookie season. Not great. Wasn't a Jamar Chase or, Justin Jefferson type rookie season, but still a pretty doggone good one nonetheless. But was hardly targeted in 2024. And then he got released. So the Saints picked him up off of waivers. He was a former LSU Tiger, also was part of the University of Nebraska for his last year. And he really took off. I'll never forget, it was Black Friday. I was watching a ton of the games over in Lake Charles. Wound up spending some time on Black Friday over at LeBear's. Excuse me, it was Gold Nugget. And watching a lot of the Friday afternoon games in the DraftKings Sportsbook, and that was a glorious experience, to say the least. And being able to see Trey Palmer, he had some jets in that game, and definitely, I think that game alone may have elevated his draft stock I'd say a little bit, almost a good bit. What I saw from him in that ball game was impressive. And we'll come back. We're going to get to what's going on with the weekend slate of college football across the state. I know everybody talks about LSU, Tulane, Cajuns. We don't discriminate. We want to make sure you get the latest on your favorite teams and where I think those games could go. We got it all coming up right here on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. All right, welcome back to the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast. Appreciate you listening in. If you haven't already, go ahead and follow us on social media. Also, why don't you subscribe to us on Spotify? Leave us a review. That way we can get into more people's algorithms as well as get into their ears and make sure they understand what we got going on here in the boot. We got a lot of great teams across the boot, and we've got some really fun ball games coming up this weekend. We'll start off with the team right here in the heart of Cajun country. That is the Louisiana Raging Cajuns hosting the Rice Owls. This is the first game under the newly renovated Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium, and my God, they are going all out here. They are not just breaking out all these gimmicks, a halftime fireworks show. They want to make sure people are there and people are loud all night long. A 7 o'clock kickoff. The fans are going to be there and they're going to be alive. I'm intrigued in this ball game mainly because I think the biggest key to victory, and it sounds cliche as all get out to say this, but as somebody who followed, not from afar, but I'd say pretty doggone close, because at my previous job, we ran St. Thomas More football games. So Walker Howard was a guy who I heard his name called out many times. And without a doubt, he's probably one of the best quarterbacks to come out of St. Thomas More. And obviously didn't necessarily have much of a chance to be able to see playing time over at LSU, where his father, Jamie Howard, once played back in the Gap. But I think with what he can do for the Louisiana Raging Cajuns is a little bit of a different thing. I am super intrigued to see how this program does in 2025 with Walker Howard at the helm. I said it on the pod on Monday. I would not be surprised if 9-3, 8-4 is in the conversation. They could very well be the team that wins the West once again. But it all starts right here. You got to play a pretty good Rice team. You got to play them. You've got to start out strong, and you can't let this fan base leave this brand new cathedral. And I wound up getting a chance to get a little sneak preview of it a week ago. And I will say this, it is a phenomenal stadium. I hope that place is rocking and it's filled damn near to capacity. I'm hoping it's 30,000. Will it be? We'll see. But I am going to say that I think Walker Howard is going to be the key to victory here for this team, simply because he's a guy that's kind of been carrying the weight of the world on his shoulders for a while. And I'm intrigued to see what he's able to do with this wide receiver core, what the run game looks like as we kind of see what Dez can do with this team as the years kind of progress onward. A lot of newer faces and newer bodies. And can Walker Howard lead his hometown team to a really nice victory? And I definitely think he is going to do so. I'll throw out a score prediction for this one here. I probably won't do this for every single one of them, but I think I'll give a score prediction for this one for sure. I'm going to go with 28-24 as your final score. Cajuns get a really nice win over Rice to start off the season 1-0, and they'll take on McNeese the following Saturday again at Our Lady of Lourdes Stadium. Meanwhile, Tulane, their renovated stadiums about a decade old at this point. We're talking about Yulman Stadium, and they're taking on Northwestern in NOLA. And I got to say, Tulane has been looking good. I feel like this on paper screams win for the Green Wave. I think Northwestern's kind of an iffy team. Tulane could lose to this team very easily, but I'm going to go ahead and give Tulane the edge here. I'd probably say it'd be a field goal or at least a 6-point victory for the Green Wave. I don't necessarily want to put a score on it, but I feel like that is going to be a win for the Green Wave. Now, Nichols has a little bit more of a challenge. It's not a massive step up from the Southland Conference to the Sun Belt, but it's still a jump up in play nonetheless from FCS to FBS football. I think Troy takes this one. Troy has been a pretty decent team the last couple years, especially on the defensive side of the football. I'll go ahead and go with Troy beating the Nichols Colonels. But again, it's the first year for head coach Tommy Rybecki. The guy just beat the defending Southland Conference champs. Crazy things have happened. I'd love to see Nichols State, the Colonels, getting a 2-0 start, but I think they dropped to 1-1 right here. Now we get to an in-state matchup, one of two coming up this weekend. Louisiana Tech taking on Southeastern. The Lions. We haven't talked that much about the Lions this week, but I definitely feel like this is going to be a game to watch. I'm not saying that we see a week one firing, but if La Tech does not win this game, I would not be surprised if Sonny Cumbie is shown the door very quickly, or better yet, they could be throwing him out like Jazz on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, how quickly they could get him out of there if they lose this game to Southeastern. And that's not a knock on Southeastern. It's just the look of losing to Southeastern combined. And I think that's the emphasis. It is combined with everything that you've done over the last couple of years. La Tech's been struggling. I said it on the pod on Wednesday. You can go check that out. It is without a doubt one of the hottest seats in the state of Louisiana, right behind Brian Kelly. And I think it is scalding hot, and this game could determine whether or not he is getting an early exit. Because La Tech wants to probably set the tone that they are going to make that move to the Sun Belt and become maybe not immediate contenders, but I think in the next year or two, they want to show themselves as being somebody who can take the West from the Cajuns. Again, there's so many interesting stories regarding La Tech coming to the Sun Belt. We'll probably get into a lot more as the weeks and months progress. Now, we got to jump to the team over in Lake Chuck. They're taking on Louisiana Christian. I think McNeese, they've got a transfer from Texas Tech. The Red Raiders sent one over to the Chuck. I think they wind up getting this win to start off the season on a positive note. If you lose this one and you're a new head coach, or a returning head coach, I should say, at McNeese, you got to kind of think, man, what did I just get myself into? And then you've got Grambling taking on Langston. Don't have a whole lot on Langston, but I think Grambling, after the last couple of years, they're going to continue to kind of move forward and perform very well. I think they wind up getting a nice win over there. Now we get to, I said it, the main event of the evening. I'd say just for college football in general on Saturday night, I think unless you're at a ball game on Saturday, this is going to be the game you are watching. It is a 6:52 kickoff now. It was like 6:30 scheduled, and then they moved it back to 6:52 for some reason. I'm like, why not just make it like a 7:05 kick? Give it that old school Atlanta Braves TBS Superstation type feel. I will always think of 6:05 when it comes to that. Either that or old school WCW. Now, LSU Clemson, one of the biggest games on the slate. Again, I think outside of the Ohio State Texas game, this is the one everybody's going to be zoomed in on, because this could be one of those games that LSU, and I've been seeing a lot of people talk about upset for LSU. I don't necessarily think it's be an upset over Clemson. In terms of rankings, probably, but at the same time, I just don't necessarily, I'm not sold on Clemson. Clemson continues to be one of those teams post Trevor Lawrence. They have to prove it to me. Dabo Swinney has a reputation that I think people are forgetting about and have kind of let slip from their mind. And that is the fact that you have a meme that hasn't been said in a while, but it's Clemson. He has lost a ton of games probably he should have won, and won some games he should have lost. And again, pre-Deshaun Watson, pre-Trevor Lawrence, you saw him lose a lot more of those games than he won. Yes, some national championships are on that resume, but I think Dabo knows it's been a bit of a struggle bus since the pandemic when Trevor Lawrence left. You had DJU, and that was a abject failure. You've had some mixed bag quarterback play. I think on paper, LSU is set for a lot more success going into 2025 than they were last year. With Garrett Nussmeier, a lot more experience under his belt, I would not be surprised if he is, I've said it on the pod earlier in the week, everybody's talking about him being a potential Heisman contender. I would agree with that sentiment. That said, you have to prove it. And this is the first game in doing so. And if you're Brian Kelly, you've lost to Florida State twice. You almost lost to him 3 times going back to when you were at Notre Dame. If you remember the execution postgame quote in 2021, but you lost to Florida State twice, and then you lost the season opener out in Vegas last year. You cannot lose that game for the 4th straight year. And really, this would be the 5th, dating back to the Mississippi State game during the COVID year for the Tigers. Again, I'd say maybe we're in the middle of the curse of Coach O. Because Coach O obviously led this team to the national championship, but right after, they didn't just go into the doghouse. They went straight down the toilet. And it was a rapid descent I don't think anybody had ever seen before. And again, with Miles Brennan being hurt, all these players opting out, it was an inevitability, but you couldn't get it back in 2021. The team kind of gave up on them because of the whole Black Lives Matter stuff and all that. Again, that's a different conversation for a different day and a different podcast. But after the whole Coach O national championship thing, they have lost a lot of these season opening games that really set the tone for your program going into a season. And it's not a great look overall if you're going to lose this game to Clemson after you lost that game to open up the season last year in Vegas, and especially the way you did. They got flat out embarrassed against USC. They kept it close, but it was not a great ball game from the jump. I was listening to the beginning portions of that game, grabbing dinner, and was just like, what in the hell is going on with this team? This was not the situation you wanted to be in. And now you're in that similar situation. It is a massive game with massive stakes. And if you're in the SEC, the conference that just means more, you have to do everything in your power to get it done and secure your victory against a team like Clemson. Garrett Nussmeier is going to lead the way. AJ Haulcy, again, he's suspended for the first half of that game. He needs to step up in a big way in the second half, because I think, in my heart of hearts, losing that guy as part of your defensive secondary is huge. So if I were to put a score prediction on this one, and I will, I'm going LSU 27, Clemson 20, a reverse of what happened last year. We're reversing the curse of 5 years without a season opening win. That script gets flipped Saturday night against Clemson in Death Valley, proving who is the real Death Valley. Screw that rock over in South Carolina. Go Tigers with this one. I know it may not be the popular opinion amongst some people that probably are fans of the Clemson Tigers, but I think the Tigers from Baton Rouge, the real Death Valley, have something to say, and they're going to make a statement that 2025 is their year. And that's a perfect segue into my final take of the pod, and that is an LSU record prediction for the 2025 season. And honestly, they have every potential to do something really cool. Again, they have Clemson. I have them marked as a win there. Then you have the La Tech game. That's an obvious win. Florida's intriguing because I think Billy Napier could have Brian Kelly's number in this contest, but it's at Death Valley. If you win against Clemson, that crowd is going to be rocking until you give them a reason not to rock anymore. So I think LSU has every chance to start 4-0 going into the game against Ole Miss, which could go either way. Like, you've got a gauntlet to get through once you get past the game against Southeastern, which is going to be a body bag game, and it's going to be a win by at least 3 touchdowns. Now, Ole Miss is the one game where I'm like, it could go either way, because Ole Miss has had, and Lane Kiffin has had Brian Kelly's mind in a pretzel. Then you have South Carolina, who looks to be a pretty decent team. Lenore Sellers has gotten rave reviews from people. I mean, he's been considered by some mock drafters to be the number 1 overall pick. I don't understand why. Then you got Vanderbilt. You got the nice little Vanderbilt game. Don't you just love these Vanderbilt games that are like just pretty much tailor-made for the 11 a.m. Jefferson Pilot game? That's what this is. And that's what screams to me that's going to be a win for LSU. This isn't a Vandy 2020 type game. Then you got the cult that is Texas A&M. You've got to play on October 25th. I think you win that game. And it's gonna be a barn burner if there ever was one. And then you got that second week of November, and things are gonna be smelling mighty nice when Alabama takes on LSU over in Tuscaloosa. Can LSU get the win over Alabama? It remains to be seen. I'll probably mark that off as one of about 2 losses I think LSU has in them. I think the Ole Miss game is a coin flip. I'd say Ole Miss wins that one. Alabama wins against LSU in a very tight ball game. And then you're playing Arkansas, and who knows who that head coach is going to be. And I'll throw out this hot take here, and shout out to some of the friends of the pod, friends of the program, I should say. That is my guy, Alan Michael, and Triple J, Van Man, that crew. They have asked me to talk about Coach O. And I feel like Coach O, because he said he wants to get back into coaching. I think there's 2 spots as of right now that would probably take him. And it's Arkansas and La Tech, who conveniently LSU plays both. Because I think Sam Pittman, he is going to get run if things go south early. I know this is a Louisiana podcast, but I definitely keep my eyes on everything going on across the country. And I think at the end of the day, Arkansas is a team that I'd be intrigued in getting Coach O back. Again, Coach O needs the money, apparently. I don't think he blew through all his money like Ric Flair does, but, you know, when you have to start paying the ex-wife because you were playing around, you know, stuff kind of happens. We'll just leave that at that. Then you have Western Kentucky in the penultimate game of the season. LSU wins that one. And then Oklahoma could be another coin flip game. I'll go ahead and throw LSU a nice little dub to finish the season 10-2. And I think they probably would wind up going to the conference championship game, more likely than not facing Georgia or Texas. I mean, it all depends. Like, I think if I were to pick like your top 3 SEC teams this year, it'd be Texas, it'd be LSU, and Georgia. And you can go ahead and just shake that up and determine who's going to be going to Atlanta from there. Like, it's just going to be a very interesting 2025 college football season, because I think we're going to start seeing more and more, especially once the SEC goes to 9 conference games. The cannibalization of the SEC is going to be something you have to watch. But that'll about do it for this podcast for the week. When we come back on Monday, we're going to recap everything that happened with your favorite teams across the state of Louisiana, break it down like a fraction here. So hope you enjoyed the show, and hopefully you stick around for the pod. Go ahead and subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube. Go ahead and follow us on social media as well. On X, go ahead and search LA Lunch Hour. Yeah. And also, go ahead and check out Louisiana Lunch Hour. Just search it on Facebook, Instagram, Threads, TikTok, everything in between. And we'll catch you on the flip side here on the Louisiana Lunch Hour podcast.